and harmony rather than unity, which is impossible, and one should not aspire for that also. Largely because we have seen several differences, and all said and done internally, the cohesion of BRICS needs a lot more homework to be brought about, and I think we should work upon them. How do we work upon them? I think the first very clear message is that we must have some coordination and some mutual understanding and consensus on the issues of conflict and war. Because in this global which we are facing today and which we are trying to cope with, one of the major issues is the outbreak of so many conflicts at this stage. And that too, where major powers have asserted themselves not as they have not done in some of the recent decades. Therefore, one issue is that on which we must really build some sort of a consensus, coordination, some harmony. It's a common good issue, I think, to my mind. The second issue, which is important, is of the governance. The global governance is in tatters today. United Nations has a lot of promise and it has done wonderful work in some of the areas. But in some of the critical areas of stability and order in the world, United Nations Security Council has been internally divided for their own reasons. There is need for urgent reforms in United Nations, and I think not only the United Nations but many other institutions like Bretton Woods and others, we have got to go into that, and I think we have to build some sort of a harmony of opinion, some common opinion, common ground amongst the BRICS countries. And third, I would say that there is extreme need for the BRICS countries to turn their promises and their rhetorics, if I say so, into reality. Despite all the institutions which have been laid down, and it's a good groundwork which has been done. But the impact of these institutions is still not being felt and experienced by the people of the countries of the BRICS. And this time, I think a right agenda has been chosen of human development. And on human development, unless the efforts go down to the ground and they are converted from promises to deliveries, the delivery deficit is there all around, but in the BRICS countries, we have got to bridge it. So, on this issue of bridging the delivery deficit, if some coordination can be brought about, probably we will be able to throw our weight far more effectively. One last point, and that also has been underlined by Ambassador Sharma, that this is not the time for necessary confrontation between South and North, or what you call the global South and the West, as it is being called. Nothing is achieved out of confrontation. We have done it for so many decades going on, whether it's a question of economic order, whether it is a question of stability and all that. We have to engage with each other. And there is an opportunity of engagement because West as a concept is also getting fragmented. There is almost, if not swords drawn, at least daggers drawn, even between US and Europe, which nobody imagined at any time. This gives a great opportunity. The US is reforming its own alliances, even with very close allies like Japan, not only Europe. Therefore, we have this opportunity, and unless we engage with them and engage them intensively on some of the creative issues, I think we would be able to throw our weight around and give the kind of results to our people who they are expecting for all these years, all these decades, out of the promises and rhetorics being made. I think we have a very important session from this point of view. I have about 5 speakers, very eminent ones, on my schedule. Their introductions are probably can be found in the book which has already been issued to you. And I would urge them, as it is listed here, that they may kindly take 15 minutes each at the most. There are three of our speakers which will come online, and there are two of very eminent persons sitting there. One of them being my esteemed colleague, and the other one a very senior diplomat and educator of diplomacy. I look forward to them. To begin with, may I request Dr. Vladimir Kozulin from Russia to make his presentation online.
Good morning, dear colleagues, distinguished participants. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this important dialogue on BRICS partnership in a multipolar world. I shall address one of the less visible but increasingly critical dimensions of BRICS cooperation, its role in managing non-traditional security threats and sustaining global stability. This topic matters because traditional security institutions were designed for a different world. The UN Security Council structure reflects. Do you hear me? Hello, colleagues? Sorry. Yes.
Yes.
The
Yes, we can hear
UN.
you.
Can I continue, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. The UN Security Council structure reflects 1945 realities. Yet today threats, pandemics, cyber attacks, climate impacts, energy disruption do not respect borders or permanent veto power. BRICS members find themselves managing these challenges cooperatively, almost by necessity. Non-traditional security encompasses threats that states cannot manage alone: terrorism and organized crime, infectious disease, cyber operations, climate changes, and resource scarcity. These challenges affect BRICS members asymmetrically but simultaneously. A pandemic in Asia impacts energy demands in Africa. Cyber attacks on financial systems in one country ripple through global markets. And the significant point is BRICS collectively controls critical assets for global security. India produces 60% of the world's vaccines. Russia and Indonesia supply essential energy resources. China dominates supply chain for critical minerals. Brazil, India, and China hold vast agricultural production capacity. So this creates both interdependence and responsibility. So BRICS has moved beyond rhetorics to institutionalization. The counter-terrorism strategy adopted in 2020 commits members to sharing intelligence, coordinating operations, and combating terrorism finance without selective application of terrorism designation. The BRICS World Working Group on Cybersecurity was established in 2015. Now coordinates exchange in threat information and develops common standards for digital infrastructure protection. Health cooperation expanded significantly after COVID-19. The BRICS Vaccine Research Center, established in 2022, coordinates development of next generation vaccines, and integrated early warning system for disease outbreaks enables rapid collective responses. So the shared principle across BRICS is clear. Terrorism has no religious, ethnic, or national character. This prevents the misuse of counter-terrorism framework for geopolitical advantage. Working groups exchange intelligence on funding networks, foreign fighters, and operational planning without requiring political alignment on other issues. This cooperation is pragmatic. Members face real terrorism threats, from ISIS affiliated in Afghanistan and North Africa to religious and regional insurgencies. Intelligence sharing has prevented attacks and disrupted funding channels. Notably, this cooperation occurs without creating a formal military alliance, which is very important. Cyber attacks has become routine instrument for state cooperation. Critical infrastructure, power grids, hospitals, financial systems, water networks increasingly face digital threats. So smaller BRICS members cannot absorb this sort alone. And the cybersecurity agenda addresses two levels. First, technical cooperation. Second, governance. BRICS advocate for international cyber norms based on sovereign equality and international law. Climate security and disaster response. Climate changes created security pressures through multiple pathways: agricultural failure leading to food price spike, drought intensifying water conflict, coastal flooding displacing population, and so on. So BRICS has adopted a disaster risk resolution framework for 2025-2028, emphasizing early warning systems, rapid response capabilities, and technology transfers. Energy security has become more complex. Oil and gas remains central, but supply disruption, whether from geopolitical crisis or energy transition, creates immediate economic shock. BRICS members depend on stable energy access, and they also seek to avoid dependence on single supplier or technologies. Maritime security presents the most complex challenge within BRICS because it intersects with great power competitions. All BRICS members depend on safe sea lanes for trade and energy import. Annual maritime commerce exceeds $10 trillion globally. So disruption affects everybody. Piracy, particularly off the African coast, remains a concrete threat requiring coordinated naval operations. However, maritime security also reveals BRICS limitations. India and China mating interests where they can overlap. Just some forward considerations. Several path merits development. First, expanding technical cooperation, joint research in pandemic prevention, coordinated response to climate impact, shared cyber defense capabilities. These are areas where BRICS can deliver tangible results. Second, strengthening the institutional frameworks, ensuring the disaster risk reduction plan translated into operational capacity, deepening the cybersecurity working groups beyond the information exchange towards common technology platform. Third, increasing transparency. As BRICS mechanisms expand, clear communication with non-member states about intentions and capabilities reduce, reduces suspicious and miscalculations. BRICS play a meaningful role in addressing non-traditional security challenges that affect all members. So this role is still developing. Capacity is growing, but remains uneven. Institutional mechanisms exist, but are not yet fully mature. The broader implication is important. BRICS demonstrates that international cooperation is possible without military alliance, hierarchical leadership, or hegemonical order. Different countries with different systems and interests can cooperate on technical and functional problems. Thank you for your attention, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bozulin, for a very succinct and pointed presentation. You have given some direction in which BRICS should consider moving. I am particularly impressed by your reference to India-China competition and differences. I think Russia itself can play a great role in bridging these differences and competitions, if at all the Russian leadership so decides. But we have the next speaker who can throw much more light on this India China issue. I have my colleague Shrikant Kondapalli. He was my colleague both in JNU and IDSA, and absolutely bright mind so far as India China relations are concerned, so far as Chinese studies are concerned. May I request Professor Kondapalli to take the.
Thank you very much, Professor Muni. Uh, a very good morning to all of you. Namaskar. Let me thank the Management, Education and Research Institute and the Center for International Studies for this invite. And let me also congratulate the organizers for taking up this. And I would suggest that before the 18th summit begins somewhere in August, September, some kind of policy related note can be sent to the South Block so that you have the relevant suggestions made just before the summit. And publication of these would also be necessary for wider publicity uh, and traction. My presentation is on the Chinese role in the BRICS and what it means for the 18th summit meeting to be held in India. So broadly, I have, from the point of view of the Chinese, let me look at their role in the BRICS. China has about $20 trillion of GDP, gross domestic product, and they have foreign exchange reserves of about $3.1 trillion. Then they are the largest trading partner for 128 countries in the world, including for majority of the BRICS countries. For us, for instance, last year, $155 billion trade. For Russia, it was about $224 billion last year, slightly reduced from $250 billion in 2024. So there is a lot of trade between China and the BRICS countries. In fact, China BRICS trade is about $562 billion last year, which means this is roughly half of the entire intra-BRICS trade. So China alone has half of the trade that flows in the BRICS countries. So that's the major point that we need to remember this in terms of what it means for the grouping as such. Secondly, the Chinese have begun CIPS, cross-border payment system. So this is now roughly about $1 trillion in 2024, but has slightly declined this year for various reasons, tariff sanctions, etc. But that's in the first quarter of 2025. We don't have the full-fledged figures for 2025 as a whole. But the expectation is that the SIPS transactions would also be slightly higher compared with the Russian SPRS and the Indian UPI, With UPI, we are doing a lot of transactions, but the Chinese one is higher than all the other. Brazil has PIX, which is used extensively in Latin America. But the Chinese CIPS has been very predominant in terms of the cross-border transactions. So China's role here is quite significant. On 3 days ago, Xu Tsai Shu came, Ma Chao Shu came to India to attend the Sherpas meeting. And he made a statement that China would push through high quality development, number one. They also mentioned that China would like India and other BRICS countries to pursue community of shared destiny. This is a code word for the Chinese political and security vision for the next few decades. I will explain this a little bit later on. And thirdly, they also mentioned about the Chinese projects. Now, the reason why I'm suggesting this is China today has a slightly different agenda than compared with many BRICS countries. And we need to take this into consideration because if the 18th BRICS summit is to be successful, we will see a lot of Chinese initiatives with their own agenda. And that needs to be factored in for the success of this summit meeting in Delhi. So in 2012, when Xi Jinping became the General Secretary of the Communist Party, he introduced the word community of shared destiny. And then subsequently in the General Assembly of the UN, as well as in other international fora, he elaborated, but still it remains very opaque. The concept of community of shared destiny. Now, in the General Assembly, he mentioned that this will be about partnerships, political partnership, economic partnership, and so on and so forth, security partnerships, and so on. Still, it is not clear what exactly it means. In my reading, the community of shared destiny is some kind of an alliance in the making. China is looking for friends and allies in the international system so that they can counter the United States. You have seen the Trump administration main focus of tariffs is actually China. Sanctions, of course, Ukraine-related events. But because China has $8.9 trillion surplus, trade surplus, with the United States in the last 20 years, and the trade deficits have become an electoral issue in the US politics. So they have identified that, and one of the ways to counter is the tariffs. But since identifying China singularly would result in a lot of problems for the US, so they impose tariffs on everybody else, including NATO partners and, of course, on India. We are now suffering from, since August 27th last year, we are suffering from 50% tariffs, 25 extra for those Russian energy imports. In the case of China, on October 31st last year at Busan meeting, there was an agreement between President Xi and President Trump on the reduction in tariffs in lieu of the Chinese lifting the ban on rare earth minerals. As you all know, the Chinese have 56% of the global rare earth minerals exports, and they have banned these for every country, including for the United States. So as a result, the climb down by the Trump administration resulted in the decrease in 147% tariffs to about 10%. There are legacy tariffs, which were also imposed on China as with the other countries. Now, this is the decisive moment where the Chinese decided that they now need to look at comprehensively, and BRICS is one platform through which China can pursue its policies. So that is a point that I want to make forthright the summit meeting, this clash between US and China. To go a little bit farther, in the 19th Communist Party Congress in 2017, China decided to advance towards the center stage. And Chinese use these words, not very explicit, but with a lot of deception. So advancing towards the center stage actually means they want to replace the United States in the international and regional orders. In regional orders, of course, we and the Japanese and the Indonesians would have to face the flag in the long term. But at the global level, because their target is the United States, so BRICS would be a platform for them to become a shield in this shadow boxing between US and China. This is the reason why India did not take up the bait on de-dollarization. When the local currencies was discussed at the Rio summit last year of the BRICS, extended BRICS, India did not commit on the de-dollarization. Of course, local currency exchange is a different matter. But in terms of a single currency, BRICS currency, there was an idea from Russia on the unit, but that has not yet been taken up by many countries. Brazil initially very enthusiastic, but even they have not been able to take up this idea. So, in other words, de-dollarization is an effort that the Russians put forward initially, but China also takes it up, but in an indirect manner rather than a direct manner, because China had sunk in trillions of dollars in global trade and also US Treasury securities and investments in different parts of the world, some $1.3 trillion of investment abroad. So these would be problematic if China completely shifts over to the de-dollarization debate. However, they have taken several measures in this regard in terms of indirect pressure on the United States. So this is a long game in which BRICS would be caught up in terms of the pressures from China and the United States. Trump already had said if BRICS countries do the de-dollarization, the tariffs will be very high on the individual BRICS countries trading with the United States. So there is that red flag already on every other BRICS country's mind. So that is a background. I heard in the morning and in other sessions about the Bretton Woods reorganization. China is the only one country which is actually pushing very hard on the IMF reorganization. In 2010, the IMF had initiated a reorganization, and specifically the voting shares are to be tweaked because China's GDP has become number 2, and it should reflect the IMF voting shares should reflect the GDP across the globe. And so the Chinese shares have been increased to about 6% in the IMF, while the G7 countries' shares have still been at a very high level, including for the United States and others. So in this round of reorganization, China benefited extensively in terms of the IMF voting shares tweaking. So that is one aspect that I would like to again highlight on this front. We all know that the former premier of Russia, Primakov, raised the issue of multipolarity. The Russians were in the forefront of multipolarity, but Russian multipolarity is defensive in nature, while Chinese is more selective multipolarity. In the case of India, we have been also using the multipolarity in the Russia, India, China trilateral and others, but it is more balanced multipolarity in the sense of taking into consideration every other stakeholder's view. So, in the case of China, selective multipolarity creates issues both at the financial level and at the political level. So, financial, we just discussed those CIPS, the NDB, CRA, contingent reserve arrangement, or the other things. But in the case of political multipolarity, the Chinese role is more selective in nature, and this creates problems. So finally, I would like to say that the Chinese role in the Indian summit meeting this year would have some consequences. Specifically, we should look at the Chinese slogans of high quality development, which is again political in nature, not necessarily economic and industry or technology oriented, but more political oriented. Second is the community of shared destiny, which has the alliances in the making in China, although they don't advertise this because of the concerns. And the other is, I agree with the previous speaker, Dr. Kozulin, that we need to focus on counter-terrorism issues. That is our national security challenge number one in the BRICS. But BRICS has not taken up this issue extensively. So there is a need for us to refocus on that. On the other hand, they have conducted a maritime exercise last month close to South Africa. Iran sent ships, but they were asked to leave. India did not join the maritime exercise because there is China want exercises everywhere else other than in South China Sea, East China Sea, or other places, but they want exercises in Indian Ocean, in the transatlantic, Pacific, Atlantic, but not in the vicinity of China. So I think BRICS should also propose, if there is a maritime exercise, to look at the stability in South China Sea and others, because 50% of Indian trade is through the South China Sea. So we have to be agile at the Indian summit meeting this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Srikant and Ronald. You have given excellent insights into the Chinese mind and how they want to deal with BRICS. You make, I think, a very important point by saying that they are looking at the BRICS platform in order to have their competition with the US. The major question is to what extent they are willing to compromise and make adjustments with the requirements of the BRICS countries. You mentioned a few things about concerns are. Now, to what extent are the Chinese willing to take them on the table and really sincerely discuss them? This is the major. You said the Chinese have their own agenda vis-a-vis the US. I think they have their own agenda vis-a-vis most of the international institutions because, as rightly you said, they want to dominate. So I think this is a major issue which has always been debated in BRICS and all other, including SCO, I would say, and would continue to be debated. The problem is that China has to show a lot more intent to compromise and adjust with other countries if really these organizations have got to succeed. Thank you very much for making all these very valid and thought-provoking issues, and I'm sure it would generate some debate. May I now request Dr. Jonas Adayas Adato to kindly make his presentation online, please?
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. A warm greetings from Ethiopia. As I speak here in Addis Ababa, the African Leaders Meeting Summit is taking place. Entirely it is Global South. And the original topic I was given was role of BRICS in strengthening cooperation among member states in the Global South. And I edited it a bit as an ongoing research project into strengthening cooperation among BRICS member countries and the Global South to reform global governance, focus on an Ubuntu approach to strategic communication. My thought is premised on responding to this question of strengthening cooperation. How are we going to strengthen? What is the mechanism? My answer as a premise is strengthening through strategic cooperation on the basis of humanity first or Ubuntu approach, because that is African philosophy which sees all human beings as synergized, as in harmony, incoherent, and believing that the whole continent, the whole planet belongs to all human race, not for few, but for all. So all should get coordinated and at the same time, particularly Global South voice should be heard through BRICS by strengthening its own membership inside. So I just look at contextualizing the study first, then objectives of the study, methodology, and unpacking key terms as well as strategic communication, global governance, nexus. The previous speaker set excellent scenario for me to...
Can you slightly adjust your camera? We can't see your full beautiful face. Now that's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right. So the context is the bipolar world order has apparently vanished with the Cold War. The unipolar period has seemingly passed, giving way to a new multipolar world order. Hence, new global governance, that is, multilateralism or multipolar system, is necessarily emerging, as the previous speakers reiterated. This phenomenon renders the global governance strategic communication nexus more complex and more significant at the same time. And yes, so since its inception in 2009, BRICS has sought to represent itself as an institution of change, hence reform the current world order for a new inclusive global governance. With that view in mind, since 2024 to 2025, to the existing five already has been stated, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and United Arab Emirates, later joined by Indonesia as full members of BRICS. The 2024 summit also designated Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Nigeria, Thailand, Uganda, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam as partner countries. BRICS is a new initiative of transnational politics reflecting global power transitions, the possible end of collective West hegemony and dominance, as well as the final countdown of the liberal international order. Here I am not promoting any specific individual ideology, but rather peaceful coexistence, putting humanity at the center. Objective of the study is, the overarching objective is, one, bridging the existing center-periphery conceptual and practical gap of communication and governance models. Two, contribute to the efforts of reforming international institutions as it is now. Three, promote the new and emerging multipolar world order by putting humanity first, strengthening cooperation among member states and the global south, that of course, BRICS I'm talking about as member states. Create more, that is the final point, create more space for diverse values and civilizations by improving BRICS strategic communication to save our planet and provide better and brighter future for humanity. So my methodology is qualitative and grounded case study, and particularly it proposes to examine effectiveness and efficiency of BRICS present strategic communication now as it works. Two, or B, pinpoint challenges of and opportunities for BRICS strategic communication to influence the current world order and suggest possible ways to reform the existing global governance structure as a voice of the global south. Specific methods of data collection and analysis include selecting convenient sampling methods for data collection, in-depth one-to-one interview and focus group discussions with identified political and media analysts, researchers, and professors, face-to-face in-depth interviews with diplomats of BRICS in BRICS countries in Addis, and applying thematic approaches for analysis and discussions. So when I talk about Ubuntu, strategic communication, global governance, I mean the following. An Ubuntu approach is the African indigenous perspective with its foundation on humanity and communality. Since I am, because we are, therefore I am. As an analytical framework to explore an alternative explanation to the Western one-size-fits-all approach to both communication and governance models. In the Ubuntu approach, the principle behind BRICS strategic communication is that the very thinking process is framed and shaped by the communal nature and the ways of human beings in the African context with shared values, vision, and future. Strategic communication here, a preferred way of how organizations or communicative entities communicate deliberately to reach set goals, functioning mainly as public relations or corporate communication activities, a comparative framework or integrated communication, an organizing principle or integrative concept, and an organizational meta-process. Global governance in this context refers to the actual rules, regulations, formal and informal institutions. Global governance is a process that coordinates international cooperation to manage issues such as climate, environment, human security, human rights, international justice, internal and international peace, economic cooperation, and trade, among other activities, by creating and enforcing aspects of the world order. And the world order is an overarching system of power and structure of international relations. It is about the nature of just arrangements and the distribution of power thought to be applicable to the entire world. So global governance and world order in this context are interchangeable but not identical concepts. For BRICS to be more effective in bringing change, in creating, entrenching global governance which is inclusive, I think strategic communication remains extremely vital. So strategic communication, global governance nexus. Strategic communication arguably enables good global governance, and a well-governed system fosters better strategic communication. Structures, processes, features, and contents of strategic communication facilitate government accountability and citizen participation. Structures of governance shape the natural flow of strategic communication, leading to global peace, which is the result of global governance. Governance structure molds strategic communication, ensuring that messages align with vision, values, and common goals. Hence, if approached in the spirit of Ubuntu, there is an organic and positive link between global governance and strategic communication at local as well as global level. The current research is therefore an attempt to explore and investigate the nexus broadly and deeply so as to come up with more insights and policy recommendations. Thank you very much indeed, and questions and comments are most welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adetro, for really giving some very creative and constructive suggestions and guidelines for the BRICS to work successfully. I'm sure that when these leaders, delegations, and nations gathered together in New Delhi, they'll listen to you and probably be guided by what you have said. Thank you very much. May I now request our next speaker, Professor Khader Rao, please enlighten us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thanks a lot again for inviting me to this conference. Yes, thank you. And I think that we have more information about BRICS and less information about the positions of our countries. That's why I would like to focus on the position of Uzbekistan with regard to BRICS. So for the Republic of Uzbekistan, whose foreign policy in the 16 has been based on the principles of pragmatism, openness, and active neutrality, interaction with BRICS represents a strategic opportunity. It is not a choice in favor of confrontation, but an instrument for diversifying international ties and strengthening negotiation positions in dialogue with traditional centers of influence. Through participation in the BRICS initiatives, Uzbekistan promotes its commitment to the supremacy of international law, respect for sovereignty, and the need to reform outdated global institutions. The institutionalization of BRICS has been a response to the demands of the time. The establishment of a new development bank and the contingent reserve agreement in 2014 marked a transition from discussions to creating real instruments for financial independence. The new development bank, unlike the Bretton Woods institutions, is focused on financial projects in sustainable infrastructure and green energy without linking loans to political conditions. This practical component is fundamentally important for global South countries, including Uzbekistan, which are in acute need for long-term infrastructure investments. The BRICS Plus format has transformed the association from a closed club into an open platform for global South. The regular invitation of guest countries to summits legitimizes BRICS as a representative forum extending beyond the 5 founding members. For Uzbekistan, which has obtained partner country status, participation in such dialogue is an opportunity to directly influence agenda setting in areas of security, digitalization, and climate change, bypassing the mediation of traditional powers. At the political level, BRICS consistently advocates from unified position for the reform of the UN Security Council and increased quotas for developing countries in the IMF. The rhetoric finds full support in Tashkent. As President of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Mirziyoyev noted, BRICS makes a significant contribution to building a fairer and more democratic world order. Thus, cooperation with the association strengthens the international legal principles on which Uzbekistan's own foreign policy is based. The foreign policy concept of Uzbekistan emphasizes multi-vector engagement and pragmatism, aligns perfectly with the flexible, non-block nature of BRICS. For our republic, this cooperation is an additional, not an exclusive vector, allowing it to maintain balance and sovereignty in decision making. Uzbekistan's strategic interest within BRICS can be summarized in several key aspects. Firstly, economic dimension. It means access to new markets, investments, and technologies for modernizing industry and developing transport and logistics hubs. Next is increasing political weight, which means enhancing its role in addressing regional, first of all, of course, Afghan settlement, water diplomacy in Central Asia, and global issues through a collective platform. Next is ensuring security, which means deepening cooperation in combating new challenges, terrorism, cyber threats, transnational crime. And cultural and humanitarian exchange, which means promoting Uzbekistan's historical and cultural heritage, scientific and educational ties. Saying this, we shouldn't forget and ignore existing challenges. Despite optimistic forecasts, cooperation within BRICS difficulties. Internal heterogeneity among participants. Differences in political system, development levels, regional priorities can slow down decision making. Geopolitical turbulence and external pressure create additional room for consolidation. For Uzbekistan, the key task remains skillful maneuvering, allowing it to extract maximum benefits from cooperation with BRICS without sacrificing relations with other important partners, including the West. And in conclusion, I would like to say that for the Republic of Uzbekistan, a strategic partnership with the association is natural and deliberate choice. It allows not only for solving specific economic tasks, but also for contributing to the construction of a more balanced and fair system of international relations, where Central Asia and its states will occupy a voting place. The further institutionalization of ties with the BRICS Plus format and the scaling up of project cooperation with the newly development bank will open new horizons for Uzbekistan's sustainable development and strengthen its position on the world stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Khalil Rao. I think you have added your intellectual weight to some of these critical issues, and I'm sure that they need to be considered seriously and acted upon by the BRICS countries. The hopes really depend upon how much they deliver on some of these aspects, which are very much there. Thank you very much. May I now request Dr. Rachel Rudolph to make his presentation, please? Online? Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now good.
All right. Good afternoon. So the work I'm going to share today, From Rio to Humanity First, is far more than a product of the library. It's born from nearly 2 decades spent traversing the vibrant, complex, and overlooked landscapes of the global South. Over these years, I've stood at the crossroads where grand strategy meets the ground, and I have seen all too often how this strategy simply fails to arrive. I am likely the only American participating today, and I carry that perspective with a very specific intent. I am here to offer an analysis that isn't based on Western assumptions, but is grounded instead in the rigorous evidence-based tracing of the Global South's own records. The study maps the entire BRICS corpus from its 2009 inception in Russia to the current 2026 presidency. But it did not stop at the summit declarations. It went deeper and analyzing the most recent and publicly available national security, defense, and non-traditional security policies of every Tier 1 member and every Tier 2 partner. The goal was simple: to see how the Humanity First promise actually maps onto the hard operational realities of the global majority. Throughout those years in the field, I kept witnessing a recurring pattern, a phenomenon referred to in the literature as a security inaction gap. It is that hollow space in disenfranchised communities where the state is either physically absent or simply too weak to act. It's a space where human insecurities, everything from the safety of the streets to the integrity of financial systems, are left to the wind. But we must ask ourselves, why is this gap widening now? The answer lies in a fundamental shift in the global security environment. For decades, the agendas of the Global South countries have been either pushed aside or in some cases strategically adopted, and their unique security needs have been silenced or ignored because the global order was driven almost exclusively by Western security priorities. When I look at the latest U.S. national defense and security strategies, I see a move toward integrated deterrence and high-end competition, which, while focusing on the macro stability of traditional powers, inadvertently reinforces the long-standing neglect of the upstream drivers of instability, the criminal governance, the digital fragility, and the localized resilience that citizens of the Global South experience daily. It is precisely within this vacuum of traditional engagement that the Global South has begun to speak for itself. Because the new reality is this: the voices of the global majority will no longer be determined by a Western script. We're witnessing an evolution of the collective sovereignty-first security narrative, a narrative that is human-centric at its core and focused fundamentally on the resiliency of individual lives. But to truly understand the weight of this narrative, we must look beyond the policy papers and see the faces that occupy the silence of that security inaction gap. I have lived among the members of communities who exist in this gap. I have sat with families dependent on both formal and criminal economies just to survive, where parents work around the clock if they can find work at all, saving every cent with heartbreaking hope that they can help their children migrate, simply to escape the reality of their violent neighborhoods. I have stood among armed actors who, if they had been given a different choice, would have been doing anything else rather than struggling in the trenches for their livelihood. And I have seen young girls who must calculate every move, careful of what they wear or where they walk, knowing that every single moment alone could mean they are trafficked or lost to violence. Each country, each community, each individual has a story. Humanity First is rooted in the idea that security is not just societal, it's individual. The answer to these insecurities lies in the development security nexus. This nexus is the beating heart of Humanity First security approach. To breathe life into this beating heart, we must move beyond theory to implementation. In my study, I focused on 4 specific pillars of resilience, not academic silos, but as functional lanes where the security inaction gap is most acute across the 21 nations that I analyzed. These lanes are not merely points on a matrix. They are fault lines where the promise of a state either holds firm or fractures under the weight of neglect. We began with transnational crime and illicit finance, because for the families I mentioned, security isn't a matter of grand borders. It's about the intimate reality of citizen security. Citizen security is the fundamental promise that a person can exist, work, and dream without permission of an armed actor. We focus on this lane because when the formal state fails to provide financial integrity or fiscal safety, the shadow state moves in to fill the vacuum, offering a dark mimicry of governance that breeds dependency through fear. It is here at this intersection of criminal governance and state absence that Humanity First mandate faces its most rigorous tests. This pillar, therefore, tests whether the BRICS can move from high-level rhetoric to functional technical toolkit, disrupting the illicit flows that allow criminal economies to outpace formal governance and reclaiming the sovereignty of the individual. Next, we look at the ICT and AI governance. Because in a world where digital access is a requirement for survival, security inaction often manifests as digital exclusion. In the gang-ridden neighborhoods of Latin America or the insurgency-plagued communities of the Sahel, digital exclusion is more than a lack of connectivity. It is a profound vulnerability that severs the last remaining ties to the former world. When local schools are shuttered due to violence, a school without digital access doesn't just lose an education, they lose their only safe harbor, leaving them invisible to the state and highly susceptible to recruitment by the armed actors who fill the vacuum. This is a battle for digital sovereignty. We trace models like India's digital public infrastructure as a way to ensure technology empowers the individual rather than merely surveilling them. For a young person at the age of society, a variable identity is the primary key that unlocks the formal economy and provides access to social protection. By establishing this digital presence, we provide a pathway for them to move out of the reach of the shadow state and back into the fold of resilient, inclusive community. The third pillar that I address in the paper is public health security, focusing on socially determined vulnerabilities. These are individual risks, such as lack of access to clean water, precarious housing in dense urban slums, or the absence of a digital identity that transform a biological threat into a community-wide catastrophe. Global shocks always find the weakest links first, turning poverty into a comorbidity. We measured whether BRICS Plus can build a resilience network that protects the individual before the crisis ever reaches their door. By leveraging BRICS Partnership for Elimination of Socially Determined Diseases, we're exploring a shift from a reactive border-heavy management to a sovereignty-first model of preparedness that secures the person. Finally, we address the climate and food resilience on what the literature defines as survival security. In scholarly terms, this represents the ultimate convergence of the development security nexus, the point where degradation of the biosphere becomes a direct existential threat to individuals' ability to remain alive. While contemporary discourse often marginalizes this as the secondary environmental concern, for the global majority, it is the primary architecture of peace. We no longer have the luxury of viewing the environmentalism as a separate silo. For those struggling in the trenches, climate change is a direct, violent driver of poverty that fuels conflict. Consider the lived lives of farming communities in West Africa, particularly across the Sahel. When the rains fail and the soils harden into dust, it isn't just a crop that is lost, it's an entire social contract. As the land becomes unable to support life, the vacuum is quickly filled by armed actors who offer the only available means of survival through illicit economies or radicalization. By focusing on food, water, and energy stability, we're not just going green, we're reinforcing the foundations of peace. It is with these lived lives in mind that I sought to move beyond anecdotal empathy and into empirical proof, measuring whether BRICS architecture is actually built to support such weight. When I ran the feasibility matrix across all Tier 1 and Tier 2 nations, coding for alignment, adoption readiness, and sovereignty sensitivity, the patterns uncovered did more than just fill the data gap. They provided a nuanced reality that both supported and challenged the prevailing academic discourse on BRICS security. The pattern one is the success of a portable toolkit. Much of the literature forget.
Please conclude. Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, conclude.
To conclude, there are looking at all the different documentations over 21 different nations, there are three different patterns. The first pattern is the success of a portable toolkit, which confirms and disconfirms some of the existing literature. The second pattern itself looks at the readiness friction, and the third pattern looks at the sovereignty bound. What it all comes down to is, at the end of the day, that there is a foundation upon which there is consensus for a humanity first or a human security approach to dealing with non-traditional security issues that would seek to the lives of lived individuals across the global South. The difficulties, however, lie in institutional capacity, which leads then to the need for capacity building, and hence the emphasis on the nature of development. And that's where moving beyond outside of the diplomatic forums and moving on to the ground on discussions of how to build the capacities is the best way to go about building that consensus to make humanity first a reality for the global South and the way in which BRICS Plus engages the global South. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rudolph, for re-emphasizing the critical dimensions of the issues involved in BRICS development and BRICS assertion. And we now, one more and very important presentation by Professor Ajay Dubey, a very esteemed colleague of mine in JNU. He would be online. Ajay, we wish you could be around with us. We were looking forward to it, but certainly we are now ready to listen to you. Professor Ajay Dubey.
Thank you, Professor Muni. Good afternoon to all of you. And congratulations to MERI for organizing this very timely dialogue, especially when the global order is in a major shift. Some of the earlier premises or motivation of BRICS, they themselves are undergoing change. And in this, the session that we are discussing today about the changing global order and how BRIC partnership can enhance global South's ability to influence the world order. As we heard from many other speakers who were just talking about that how the BRICS had several mandates, changing the global governance system, affecting economic cooperation among them. Also, as Professor Muni pointed out in his initial remarks, also hinting at security and conflict management that the BRICS should address, and several other issues that were raised by the participants. I think, in my opinion, all of them have values and importance over a period of time, but currently, given the situation where in the global order, major countries, especially the West and United States, especially has said America first. Many other countries are also doing first. The overall, the norms and rule-based orders are changing. The global South, which was active and took several initiatives during Cold War, had resurfaced after the globalizations, has failed to deliver what it promised. And it is in this context, the new groups of BRICS, and I can find myself to this alone, though there are many other issues. The new group of BRIC countries and the new mandate of BRIC to enhance the capacity of global South to influence the world order, to assert their voice at global level is very important. It's not just the most developed countries or relatively developed countries of the global South who should lead the BRICS. It's the expansion of BRIC and primacy of the agenda of partnership for economic development, besides many other agendas which have problems and which are over a period of time also losing their relevance. That the partnership among global South, relatively developed countries and developing countries or less developed countries is very important, especially with the West and developed countries, have abandoned the agenda of including the global south or the north-south dialogue for effective development in global south. And it is from this context that we also find a continent like Africa, which was only represented by South Africa earlier, a country which has more in common with the West than with the Africa itself. Was something was not representing the global South from African continent. And therefore, the two more members who have joined, Egypt and Ethiopia, is a welcome step in that direction. Also, countries like Nigeria, Uganda, and several others are very influential countries within African continent, and they should join when we are moving towards a multipolar world where the global South is going to develop partnership, is going to use the South-South framework as alternative to what was tried during globalization, and effect that partnership through the BRICS forum. Because we see the other agenda, like even security issues or conflict management, has become very controversial. There had been differences among BRICS countries on these issues. There had been different perception of different power within the global South itself. We had also seen that country like United States which has predominant position in security issues globally, has taken a very aggressive view on this. We saw the naval exercise that took place in South Africa. Of course, not as a BRIC exercise, but calling BRIC countries to participate, where Professor Srikanth Kundapalli pointed out. India did not participate, Brazil was just observer. And finally, Iran, which was invited, had to be uninvited by the president of South Africa under pressure from the United States when the White House issued a statement, when the embassy issued a statement against participation of Iran. So there are certain areas where there is still contestation, controversy. But the kind of approach that India has, Sagar or Mahasagar, where growth and security are linked. One does not have to look for security without growth. And it is in this context that the global South assertion and partnership in negotiating this multipolar world that is emerging and meeting some of the challenges of the countries of the North who are more focusing on themselves and are outright rejecting the established norms and rules of the global order, that they should come and design a order which is much more equitable at global level, and where their voices, their interests are also represented. And from this perspective, I think India's presidency this year for BRICS is very important. BRIC Plus should grow and should bring more countries in order to enhance its voice, not just those who are relatively more developed, but those whose growth and prosperity may matter to the world and for the emerging new world order. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dubey, for unraveling, I would say, the dynamics of expansion in BRICS and supporting that we must have a new look BRICS and probably even new leadership. I'm not very sure if those who are holding chairs in BRICS all these years are ready for this kind of a very challenging role which you are suggesting. But it's very interesting and thought provoking that powerless be made powerful in one way or the other, and let us see if this works with the new organization. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the panel presentations, and we now go into the question answer I'm sorry, Professor Dwivedi, we are already exceeding the time, but hopefully we started late. Also, maybe we have another 10 to 15 minutes for question answer. I suggest that in the interest of time, we take all the questions together, and I would request respectable the panelists to jot down on what they want to respond, because the response would also should not be more than 2 to 3 minutes. Again, in the interest of time, I know I have a very unpleasant job to do of managing the time, and it is always the predicament of chairpersons all around the world that they have to be ringmasters to say no to somebody. I know that it's very, very difficult to explain critical issues in a very short time. But that's what the compulsion and the problem we have. With this, I open the discussion to the House, and those who want to raise question may kindly raise their hands and briefly put your question. Not really go into elaborate discussion of or explanation of that. And panelists, please go on noting down what you would like to react on. Yes, yes. Please identify yourself.
Sir, my name is Rawat Singh, and I'm second year MBA student of MERI College. And good afternoon, sir. Thank you for coming in our college for this MERI Dialogue 6.0 and enlightening us about BRICS. Sir, my question is, with tensions between India and China politically these days, how BRICS is playing the role in between them to have maintaining the multilateral countries, multilateral connections between the countries of BRICS.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Next, please. Come to the question straight away, please. बोलिए भैया.
Thank you, sir, for giving me the chance. So my question is that, sir, like we have discussed about the new development bank. So the question is that, sir, World Bank is doing good, but dependency on World Bank somewhere give the idea that they have the more dominance for India. So, sir, what are the what are the transparency or governance or accountability they should follow so that sir for the global investor they build a confidence so that they can invest in new development bank. Morning, sir. My name is Indian BBA student. So my question, thank you for first of all, thank you everyone for sharing so insightful knowledge. My question is that, sir, as BRICS nation is increasingly digitizing their economies, so how will the blockchain technology can coordinate with these to protect the global south financial data from cross countries, depending on Western technologies?
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, I have the, good afternoon, sir. I have the question about if the BRICS countries have the economic potential, why have not they into a common BRICS currency? What the political or structural challenges are prevented it?
No more than two. Two more.
Good morning, sir. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I have a question about how can BRICS financing turn Uzbekistan into a primary transit hub for the global South trades?
The last question, please. Yes, we.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashwin Bedi, and I'm from MBA department. My question is that there are a lot of countries in BRICS. So obviously there are a lot of opinions among them. So how the BRICS resolve their conflicts when the how the BRICS resolve their conflicts when different opinions regarding the challenges and opportunities come.
Okay. Now from the front rows. No, sir, that's okay. There is somebody.
So my question is specifically to Professor Kondapalli. Sir, in view of China obviously speaks a very enhanced role in the global geopolitics, especially through BRICS and also in the region. How can it justify keeping in view its recent activities or rather the aggressive activities in the South China Sea, East China Sea, and also in the region, including the cartographic aggression which China is doing against India also and against many other countries in the South China Sea?
Yeah, I think panelists would note that how much Indians love China. And that's why we have so many questions and comments on them. Can we first take the online panelists to respond if they wish to? Uh, if they wish to, if you feel to comment on any of the point, you have your 2 minutes. To begin with, Dr. Kozulin, please. No response? Can I now go to Dr. Adeto, please?
Thank you very much. I'd like to comment on intra-BRICS member countries' cohesion and integration. That's very important. I think difference is not enmity, but this difference should be seen critically. For instance, Ethiopia and Egypt both of them really are members of the new members of BRICS. But when we have the principle of dialogue, coming together, discussing together, I think that principle of strategic communication should be the way out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Rudolph?
To address the lack of the different viewpoints and the consensus, what I would say is that that's the beauty of BRICS in and of itself and as a mechanism, because countries and both member states and partner countries can determine what they can and cannot do in proceeding at a high level. But it's really through the working groups and through institutional mechanisms among the states that you see on the ground realities taking place, where BRICS has a presence, and the lived lives of individuals feel that presence itself. Just as I did with respect to China, I live in China, and I have lived in China for over for 8 years. And what I will say, there's distinction note here that within China and among the Chinese people, that they do like Indians, and I think if we can find a way to get at that people-to-people component in the nature of relations, perhaps we can overcome some of those differences. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Dubey?
I have no comment on this. No question directed at me.
Professor Dubey?
Sorry, there's no question directed at my presentation.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you.
Shrikant, can we take you for the last word? You will have the last word. Just hold on. Professor Haider Rao, please.
Thank you very much. I think all these questions are very difficult to respond to all of them, because in any case, we are lacking information. Because what we have currently, it's the summits of our leaders. And there are no any other meetings at a lower level. So I think we should think a little bit how to expand our relationship at a lower level. Because mostly it's focusing on our leaders' engagement, but we should more focus on working levels as well. Because without focusing on other levels, it will be difficult to properly assess what is happening in the world affairs, especially in the framework of BRICS. That's why I think, especially academic community should generate more ideas how we can do it properly. This is, I think, the most uh, effective way, and we can be uh, more effective in this case. Effective in this case. Thank you.
Srikant, in the beginning of his presentation, made a very interesting point. The policy, MERI should make a policy note and pass it on to South Bloc for decision making. I think I know a little bit about how South Bloc functions, and I'm sure Srikant knows a lot about it, how South Bloc functions, to what extent they will act on their policy. But the suggestions is $1 million suggestion, and I think we will do it accordingly in terms of academic presentations and policy, which Professor Khadrov has just suggested. That there are so many notes which go and rest comfortably in the files in the ministries of foreign affairs all over the world, not only in India, and India is no exception to that. But with this note, Professor Kondapati, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Muni. Thank you also for all the questions that were raised from the audience. I think one of the major questions which has links with the other questions is India-China differences. How do they operate in BRICS? Now, a few years ago, there was the Samarkand meeting of SCO, and Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan were actually fighting with each other, blows, and they were discussing in Samarkand meeting. So we have that kind of a situation as well, where bilateral relations do not spill over into the multilateral initiatives, multilateral meetings, summit meetings. In international relations theory, the liberal institutionalism, if you read Keohane, Joseph Nye, and others, they suggest that multilateralism should not raise the issues of bilateral issues. Multilateralism should not have the disputes being considered, bilateral disputes being considered. Multilateralism should not have the other member in the multilateral grouping as enemy. You cannot consider the other member in a multilateral institution as your enemy. If there are differences, then they have to resort to the CBMs, confidence building measures. So these are there in the multilateral format. So generally, politely, they don't raise the bilateral issues. There are exceptions, as I just mentioned, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan fighting 4 or 5 years ago when the meeting was taking place. And we also had the India-China conflict indirectly during the Operation Sindoor, when J-10s, JF-17s, other Wing-Loong drones and others were supplied to Pakistan. So generally, we bilateral issues we avoid. And India-China being more mature, they don't bring all these. Unlike Pakistan-India relations, there is no spillover effect of this in the multilateral format. So this is one explanation one can provide. But yes, there are also occasions. Dr. Manmohan Singh raised the issue of Arunachal Pradesh and the water issue in Johannesburg meeting of the BRICS long ago, some 15 years ago. But that was a bilateral meeting in a multilateral meeting in the sideways. So that was all right. Second issue is on NDB that someone raised on the New Development Bank of the BRICS. how can they sustain financially? So the member countries, BRICS member countries, have deposited $100 billion, $25 billion each, with South Africa $5 billion as the seed money for any infrastructure project that these countries would require. Because there is generally, as somebody mentioned, IMF and World Bank were not disbursing loans for a long time. And IMF, World Bank shifted to Europe because of the Eurozone crisis. The PIGS countries, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain, they were in doldrums, so much of the aid was given to these European countries due to the Eurozone crisis. So there is very less money coming into the infrastructure projects in the global south. So they decided to have the NDB, and NDB so far has disbursed $39 billion in about 120 projects, including, by the way, metro stations in India, water conservancy projects, transportation networks, healthcare related, educational institutions as well. Got a lot of investments from the NDB. And NDB is today now having a new model of raising capital from the private sector. So Dilma Rousseff, the president of the NDB, raised $16 billion from the corporate groups for financing any infrastructure projects. The other is NDB is functioning professionally, meaning they have a project overview committee. They will look at the environmental issues, they will look at corruption issues or other issues. So it is very professional. NDB is doing it in a very professional way, and this is also basically the way that the NDB want to learn from the IMF, World Bank, or ADB or other. So it is very professionally done. The projects selected are based on the ability of the recipient country to pay back the. So it is very professional done. The third question is on the financial data and how secure is this when we are experimenting with so many the BRICS Pay, the SPRS, the CIPS, UPI payments in India. How secure is this? Now, BRICS began in the Rio summit last year about the local currencies. And then they found some problems in interoperability between different central banks. RBI, for instance, is responsible for Indian missions, Reserve Bank of India. Likewise, the People's Bank of China in China, the Russian, Brazil counterparts. Now, they're very conscious of the problem related to the financial data. Most of these are open sources. So it is based on transparency at the moment, but interoperability still is a problematic. So they were not really able to succeed other than at the bilateral level. When it comes to the multilateral, including all the BRICS countries, then the financial system is not responding in a sound manner. So that's where the bottleneck is, because you have to integrate all these data and also the mechanisms. So that's where the problem is. Yeah, so yeah.
Mr. Chairman, may add a couple of words.
No, I hand it over to Professor Dwivedi now. Go ahead. Go ahead, please. Oh, he wanted to say something more? Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Just coming back to your words, Professor Kapada, I would like to say that the key problem of current international relations, is the lack of confidence between the countries. It is the problem of contemporary international relations and multilateralism. That's why the role of regional groupings expanding and enhancing. But we should work on enhancement of our interstate relations. That's why we should fill this gap in order to achieve our goals. This is my point. Thank you very much. Okay.
He is our darling in Jawaharlal Nehru University. Gratitude to Professor Shrikant, Professor Kaidaro, Dr. Rachel, Dr. Yunus, Professor Wadim, and Professor Dubey. We have already overshot by half an hour, so let's make it up by having the quick lunch, because there is going to be cascading impacts. So once again, gratitude. But now I request Professor Lalit Agrawal, Vice President, MERI Group of Institutions, to present memento to chair and to both the paper presenters. First to Professor Muni. Now to Professor Kondapalli. May I now request to Professor Kaidarov to please accept a token of gratitude from MERI side. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. You all are invited for lunch. And as I requested, please let's get together by 2:15.